I never thought my life could fall apart so quickly, but here I am, staring at the remnants of my marriage, wondering if anything was ever real. It all started on what was supposed to be just another Friday evening. My wife, Emily, had been acting off for a few weeks, maybe longer if I am being honest. I could not quite put my finger on it, but something was gnawing at me. I brushed it off at first. After 8 years together, ups and downs were part of the deal, right? But this felt different, like something lurking just beneath the surface, and I knew I had to find out what was going on. Emily had always been the life of the party, the kind of woman who lit up every room she walked into. When we first met, she was this bright, magnetic person. I was a bit quieter, but we somehow balanced each other. Our friends used to joke we were like the TV family, picture perfect and always together. I genuinely believed we were that couple. I trusted her. I trusted us. Until I started noticing small changes, things that did not add up. She was distracted around me, always on her phone, guarding it like her life depended on it. Her smile, the one that used to be just for me, seemed reserved for someone else. At first, I wanted to believe it was just work stress. She is an HR manager at a local firm, always working late, dealing with employees' drama. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. I did not want to be that guy, the jealous, insecure husband. So, I stayed quiet even though I was dying inside. Then one Friday evening, she told me she was too tired for our dinner plans. "You go ahead, Jack," she murmured, pulling a blanket up to her chin on the sofa, barely meeting my eyes. I tried to argue, to say we could reschedule, but she just shook her head. Something was off, but I still did not want to believe it. I took her at her word, told her I would be back early, and went to meet a friend for dinner. Sitting there, listening to my friend talk about his own marriage, I could not shake the nagging feeling that something was happening behind my back. About an hour into dinner, I felt this urge to go home, to see if Emily was really sleeping, or if something else was going on. Call it intuition or paranoia, but I left early, telling my friend I was not feeling well. The whole drive home, my hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. By the time I pulled up, my heart was racing, and I could barely think straight. The house was dark, silent, like any other night. But when I stepped inside, I noticed something odd. The faintest trace of perfume that was not Emily's usual scent. And that was when I saw it, her handbag and phone sitting on the kitchen counter. Normally, she would never leave it there. In that moment, a surge of curiosity and panic washed over me. I knew it was wrong, but I reached for her phone, my fingers trembling as I unlocked it. She had recently changed her password, but I guessed it on the third try, our son's birthday. And there it was, right in front of me, a conversation with a name I did not recognize, Adam. At first, I thought it might be a work friend, but the messages were too familiar, too flirty. I started scrolling up, reading lines that made my stomach twist and my blood boil. They talked about meetings, times they had been alone. Words like "miss you" and "when can I see you again?" flashed on the screen. My head started to spin. Felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. My Emily, my wife, the mother of our son, was having an affair. I knew I had to confront her. But as I stood there, staring at her phone, part of me wanted to pretend I had never seen those messages. I wanted to go back to the world where my wife was still mine, where I was not some fool being lied to. But I knew there was no turning back now. I heard her footsteps coming down the stairs, and I shoved the phone back where I found it, trying to calm my racing heart as she walked into the kitchen. She looked at me surprised. "You are back early," she said, her voice a little too casual, a little too forced. I could feel the lie hanging between us like a shadow. I took a deep breath, swallowing the fury, the betrayal, and the hurt that threatened to spill over. "Yeah," I replied, my voice tight. I did not feel like staying out. She nodded, avoiding my eyes as she poured herself a glass of water. I could see her hands trembling, just barely. For a split second, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the messages, the way she had laughed with him, the way she had shared pieces of herself that she used to share with me. I knew I could not let this go, could not pretend I was okay. Without warning, I blurted, Who is Adam? Her eyes widened, her hand frozen on the glass. She looked up at me, caught off guard, but in that moment, she recovered, forcing a confused smile. Adam? I do not know what you are talking about. I could not hold back any longer. Do not lie to me, Emily. I saw the messages. Her face went pale, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to find the words. There was no way out, and we both knew it. The truth was out in the open, hanging between us like a knife ready to drop. Jack, she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. It was nothing, promise. It was just texting. I shook my head, unable to believe what I was hearing. Just texting? You expect me to believe that? She looked down, her shoulders slumping as she finally dropped the act. I am so sorry, she whispered. It was a mistake. But it was not just a mistake. It was the betrayal of everything we had built together, the life we had made, the family we shared. I thought I could handle anything life threw at me, but this shattered me in ways I did not think were possible. I wish I could say I was calm, that I took a deep breath and thought it all through. But instead, I felt like my heart was in free fall, pounding so loud I could hardly hear her excuses. She was still standing there, half expecting me to brush it off, like I would magically forgive her just because she looked sorry. I felt a rage building up inside me like never before. Do you really think sorry is going to cut it? I said, my voice rough. You think you can just apologize, and I will forget about everything I just read? Emily's face crumpled, and she reached out, trying to place a hand on my arm, but I stepped back. I could not let her touch me. I felt sick just being in the same room. Jack, please, just listen to me. Oh, I am listening, I snapped, bitterness flooding my voice. I am listening, Emily, but all I hear are lies. How long has this been going on? How many times have you lied to my face and then climbed into our bed like nothing was wrong? She looked down, guilt etched all over her face. She opened her mouth but then closed it, like she was scrambling to find the right words. But there was nothing she could say. There was no explanation that would make any of this okay. It was not supposed to be like this, she stammered finally, her voice so low I almost did not hear it. It was just a stupid fling. I was lonely, Jack. You have been so busy with work, and I just felt alone. Alone, I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. You felt alone. So you thought it would be a good idea to turn to someone else instead of talking to me? Tears slipped down her cheeks as she nodded, looking so small and broken that, for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered those messages, the way she had talked to Adam like he was the only one that mattered to her. Like I was just some background character in her life. I never meant for it to go this far, she said, her voice breaking. I know that sounds like an excuse, but it is the truth. I was going to end it. I did not know how. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to punch a hole through the wall. So you were going to keep sneaking around behind my back, hoping I would never find out? No, she shouted, startling me with her sudden intensity. I just thought I could fix it on my own. I thought you would hate me if you knew the truth. I let out a bitter laugh. Well, congratulations, Emily. Now I know everything. And guess what? You were right. I do hate you right now. Her face crumpled, and she covered her mouth, stifling a sob. Part of me wanted to walk out the door, to leave her standing there alone, to make her feel just a fraction of the emptiness that was tearing me apart. But I could not. I could not just leave without knowing how deep this went, how much of our life together had been a lie. So, how did this even start? I asked, my voice cold. How does a wife and mother end up throwing everything away for some guy she met God knows where? Emily sniffled, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. It was stupid. We met at a work event. He was new at the company and we just clicked. He was charming, funny, and he made me feel alive again. Alive, I repeated, barely able to contain my anger. You make it sound like I was killing you. She shook her head quickly. No, it is not like that, Jack. You are, you are a wonderful husband, a wonderful father. I just, I just lost myself somewhere along the way. I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around what she was saying. So I was not enough? Our life, our family. It was not enough for you. Emily looked away, her face pale. It was not about you, Jack. It was me. I felt like I was just fading into the background. Like I was nothing more than a wife and mother. Just a piece of furniture in the house. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. All this time, I thought I was giving her everything: security, love, stability. But to her, it was not enough. She needed something else. Something I could not give her. And that was when I realized that no matter what she said, no matter how many times she apologized, this was not something that could be fixed. I took a step back, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. So what now? Do you want me to forgive you? To pretend this never happened? Her eyes filled with desperation. Jack, please. I know I messed up. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I love you. I love our family. I do not want to lose everything we have. I shook my head, bitterness flooding my voice. You already lost it, Emily. The moment you decided to let someone else into your life like that, you lost everything. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand, stopping her. I could not bear to hear another word. I need some air, I muttered, turning and heading for the door before she could say anything else. The night air was cool, but it did nothing to soothe the fire burning inside me. I walked down the empty street, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on my shoulders. Every step I took felt like I was leaving pieces of my life behind, pieces I would never get back. After walking for what felt like an eternity, I found myself at a small park. I sat down on a bench, staring out into the darkness, my mind replaying every moment of the past few years, searching for any sign that I had missed, any clue that might have told me this was coming. But there was nothing, just a black void of betrayal and pain. I do not know how long I sat there, but eventually my phone buzzed. I pulled it out of my pocket, expecting another message from Emily, but instead, it was from my best friend, Mike. Hey man, you okay? Emily just called me, said you were upset. What is going on? I stared at the screen, my hands trembling as I typed out a reply. I found out she has been cheating on me. The response came almost instantly. What? Are you serious? Where are you? I am coming over. I sent him my location, and within minutes, I saw his headlights pulling up to the curb. He got out of the car and hurried over to me, his face a mix of shock and anger. I cannot believe this. Emily? Cheating? What the hell happened? I told him everything, every gut-wrenching detail, from the messages on her phone to her sobbing confessions. Mike listened in silence, his jaw clenched, his fists balled up as he tried to process it all. That is insane, Jack, he said finally, shaking his head. You do not deserve this, man. You deserve someone who actually respects you. I nodded, but his words felt hollow. I knew he was right, but it did not make the pain any easier to bear. It did not change the fact that the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with my life, had thrown it all away for some fleeting thrill. So, what are you going to do? Mike asked, his voice hesitant. I shrugged, my gaze fixed on the ground. I have no idea. I feel like I am standing at the edge of a cliff, and no matter what I do, I am going to fall. Mike placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm. Whatever you decide, just remember you are not alone in this. I am here, man. Always. I managed a small nod, grateful for his support. But the truth was, I had never felt more alone in my life. I knew that no matter how many people were there for me, this was a burden I had to bear on my own. As we sat there in silence, the weight of everything pressing down on me, I realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was dark and uncertain, filled with anger, betrayal, and heartache. But deep down, I knew I could not turn back. The only way out was through. The next morning, I woke up in my childhood bedroom, having crashed at my parents' house after a night of empty conversations with Mike. My head was pounding, and for a second, I almost forgot about what happened. But then the memories came rushing back. Emily, the texts, Adam. The betrayal was like a dark cloud, looming over every thought, every breath. I was just about to head out when my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Please come home. We need to talk about this. I ignored it, letting her message sit there unanswered. I was not ready to face her, not after everything I had just discovered. How could she possibly expect me to come back home like nothing had happened? Still, the longer I stayed away, the more questions piled up in my mind. I needed answers, and I needed to hear them from her face to face. So, after hours of stewing and pacing around my parents' living room, I finally decided to head home. As I stepped through the front door, Emily was sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked up as I walked in, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "Jack," she started, her voice breaking. "Thank you for coming back." I cut her off before she could start with the apologies. "I am not here to forgive you. I am here because I want to understand how this happened, why this happened. I need to know how long you have been lying to me." She took a deep breath, and I could see her struggling to find the words. "It started a few months ago," she admitted finally, her voice barely a whisper. "It was just innocent at first. Adam was new at work, and we got along. I liked having someone to talk to, someone who seemed interested in me. And I was not?" I asked, the bitterness dripping from every word. "No, that is not what I meant," she said quickly, looking away. "I know you care about me, Jack. I know you love me, but it just felt like we were living separate lives. You were always so busy with work and with our son, and I felt invisible." Invisible! I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "Do you know how hard I have worked to give us a good life? Do you know how many hours I have put in just so we could have everything we wanted? And you feel invisible?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I know you have done everything for us. But somewhere along the way, I felt like I was fading. I know it is not an excuse, but it is the truth." "So you decided to solve that by sleeping with another man?" I shot back, unable to keep the anger from my voice. She flinched, her face crumpling with guilt. "It was never supposed to go that far. I thought it was just going to be a harmless flirtation. But then it escalated, and I did not know how to stop it." I took a step back, running my hands over my face, trying to make sense of everything she was saying. "Emily, do you realize what you have done? You have torn apart our family for a fling, for some cheap thrill with a man you barely know." Tears started streaming down her cheeks, and she looked up at me, desperation in her eyes. "I know, Jack. I know I have messed everything up. But I love you. I want to fix this. I am willing to do whatever it takes to make it right." I let out a bitter laugh. "Make it right? How exactly do you plan to do that? Do you have some magical way of erasing what happened?" She reached out, trying to grab my hand, but I pulled away, the thought of her touch repulsive. "Jack, please," she begged, her voice trembling. "I am willing to go to therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Just, please do not leave me." I stared at her, the woman I thought I knew, and felt nothing but a hollow emptiness. "You think therapy is going to fix this? You think talking to a stranger is going to erase the image of you with him?" Emily's face contorted with pain, but she held my gaze. "I know it will not be easy, Jack. I know I have hurt you in ways I can never take back. But I want to try. I want to do everything I can to show you that I am sorry, that I am committed to making things right." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rage that was bubbling just beneath the surface. "You want to make things right? Start by telling me everything. Do not leave anything out, Emily. I want to know the truth, all of it." She swallowed hard, nodding as she wiped her eyes. "All right," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It started one night after a work event. We had been drinking, and I made a stupid decision. I thought it was just going to be a one-time thing, but then he kept messaging me, and I kept replying. It became this escape, this thing that made me feel wanted again." "Escape," I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "From what, Emily? From the life we built together? From me? From our son?" She looked down, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I know it sounds horrible, Jack, and I wish I could take it all back. I never wanted to hurt you. I do not know. I was looking for something I felt was missing. I shook my head, unable to wrap my mind around her excuses. Missing? What could you possibly feel was missing? I have given you everything. I know, she whispered, her voice breaking. And that is what makes this so terrible. You have been everything I could ask for, and I threw it all away. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with words that would never be spoken. I could see the regret in her eyes, the realization that she had shattered something she could never put back together. But even as she sat there, begging for forgiveness, I knew deep down that it was not enough. She had broken something inside me, something I was not sure could ever be mended. So what now? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. What am I supposed to do with all of this? Emily looked up at me, her eyes pleading. Please, Jack, I am begging you, give me a chance. I will prove to you that I can be better, that I can be the wife and mother you deserve. I looked away, my mind spinning with the weight of everything she had just told me. Part of me wanted to believe her, to cling to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back. But another part of me, the part that was broken and bruised, knew that forgiveness was not something I could offer so easily. I need time, I said finally, my voice cold and distant. I need to figure out what I want. She nodded, her face etched with sorrow. I understand, Jack. Take all the time you need. I will be here waiting. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, the weight of her betrayal heavy on my shoulders. I went to our bedroom, shut the door, and sat down on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling. The images, the words, the lies, all of it replayed in my mind, haunting me like a ghost that refused to be laid to rest. As I sat there in the silence, a single thought echoed through my mind. Could I ever forgive her? Could I ever trust her again, knowing what she was capable of? The answer was unclear, lost in the swirling storm of anger, heartbreak, and confusion. And as much as I wanted to believe that things could go back to the way they were, I knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same. The days that followed felt like I was sleepwalking through someone else's life. I barely ate, barely slept, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. My mind was my worst enemy, replaying the betrayal over and over, taunting me with images I could not unsee and words I could not unhear. Emily tried to reach out multiple times, leaving notes around the house, sending me texts, trying to pull me into long conversations. She would say things like, Jack, we have to talk about this, or, I am willing to do anything to make this right. And the one that stung the most, think about our son, Jack. Do you really want him to grow up without a family? That last one hit me hard. She was right in one way, our son deserved a happy family. But was staying together really the right answer if all that remained between us was resentment and anger? I was not even sure I could look her in the eyes without feeling betrayed. Yet, somehow, she kept expecting me to work through it with her as if the betrayal was just a speed bump we could get over with a few counseling sessions. The real breaking point came one night after dinner. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes and trying to avoid her as usual, when she walked in and leaned against the counter, looking like she had something important to say. Jack, I know you hate me right now, but I am doing everything I can to be better, to show you that I am sorry. I ignored her, focusing on scrubbing a stubborn stain on a plate. She sighed, then continued, I know it will take time, but I need to know if there is any chance for us. I need to know if you can ever forgive me. I dropped the plate in the sink, water splashing up. You want to know if I can forgive you? I turned to face her, anger simmering just beneath the surface. Forgiveness is not some magic word that makes everything okay. Emily, you destroyed my trust. You shattered our life together. And now you expect me to just move on. Tears filled her eyes, but she held her ground. Jack, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you in ways I cannot even begin to understand. But I am willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I just need to know if you are willing to try. I shook my head, unable to believe the desperation in her voice. You do not get it, do you? This is not something you can fix with empty promises. This is not some broken toy you can glue back together. She looked down, her shoulders slumping. I am trying, Jack. I am really trying. But you keep shutting me out. Maybe that is because I am realizing I cannot live like this, I said, my voice cold and final. Every time I see you, I see him. Every time I hear your voice, I hear the lies. And I cannot do it anymore. Her face went pale, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Jack, please, do not say that. We can work through this. We can rebuild what we had. Rebuild what? I shouted, my voice echoing through the kitchen. There is nothing left, Emily. You killed it the moment you decided to sneak around behind my back. Do you even understand what you did to me? Do you understand what you did to our family? She was silent, her face streaked with tears. I know, Jack. I know I hurt you, but I am not ready to give up. I love you, and I am willing to fight for us, even if you are not. I took a step back, feeling the weight of her words. You love me. I laughed bitterly. If you loved me, you would not have been with him. You would have respected me, respected our family. But you did not. She flinched at my words, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the texts, the lies, the betrayal, and any pity I felt evaporated. I need time, Emily, I said finally, my voice steady. I need space to figure out what I want, and I cannot do that with you here, breathing down my neck every second. Her face crumpled, and she took a shaky breath. So what? You want me to leave? Yes, I replied, the word coming out colder than I intended. I need you to go. Stay with your sister or a friend. I do not care. I just cannot be around you right now. She hesitated, her eyes pleading with me to reconsider, but I held firm. I need space, Emily. If you really want me to even consider forgiving you, you will give me that. With a resigned nod, she wiped her tears and turned toward the door. Fine, Jack. If that is what you want, I will go. But please, do not make any final decisions until we have had a chance to talk. Really talk. I did not respond, and after a few seconds, she picked up her keys and left, the sound of the door closing echoing through the empty house. For the first time in days, I felt a small sense of relief, a tiny sliver of peace. But it was quickly overshadowed by the crushing weight of everything I had lost. That night, I called Mike and told him what happened. I told her to leave, Mike. I could not take it anymore. Every time I look at her, all I see is betrayal. Mike was quiet for a moment before he finally spoke. I get it, man. This kind of betrayal, it is not something you just get over. And honestly, maybe some time apart will help you see things clearly. Yeah, I replied, though deep down, I was not sure anything would make this pain go away. I just do not know what to do next. You do not have to know right now, Mike said, his voice steady. Take things one day at a time. Do what is right for you, Jack. And remember, you are not alone in this. You have friends, family. We are all here for you. After the call, I sat alone in the dark, the silence of the house pressing down on me like a weight. I tried to distract myself, to push away the memories, but they kept creeping back, haunting me with reminders of everything I had lost. Days turned into weeks, and Emily respected my request for space. She would text occasionally, small messages asking how I was doing or if I needed anything, but I never replied. I needed to find my own way through this darkness, and I knew that meant cutting her out completely, at least for now. One evening, I was sitting on the back porch, nursing a drink and watching the sunset, when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Curious, I opened it and felt my heart sink. It was Adam. I am sorry for what happened between me and Emily, his message read. It was never my intention to come between you two, and I deeply regret what happened. I stared at the message, my hands shaking with rage. The nerve of this guy, to sneak around with my wife and then have the audacity to reach out to me, like some pathetic apology would make everything better. I typed out a response, my fingers flying over the screen. You think you can just say sorry and everything will be fine? You tore apart my family. You destroyed my marriage. You have no idea the damage you caused. He replied almost instantly, his tone apologetic. I know, and I am truly sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. Emily and it was a mistake. I should never have crossed that line. My anger was boiling over, and I wanted nothing more than to unleash every ounce of it on him. But I stopped myself, taking a deep breath. Responding would not change anything. It would not undo the betrayal. It would not bring back the life I thought I had. So, I blocked his number, deleting his messages and any trace of him from my phone. I did not need his apologies. I did not need his guilt. I needed to move on, to find a way out of this nightmare that had become my life. But as I sat there, staring into the darkening sky, I knew that moving on was easier said than done. The next day, I woke up with a strange clarity. I still felt the weight of everything Emily had done, but there was this tiny part of me, a small voice whispering that maybe, somehow I could get through this. It was like coming up for air after being underwater too long. I knew I was not fully okay. Far from it, but at least I was breathing. I finally decided to meet with a divorce lawyer. Even if I had not made up my mind yet, I needed to understand my options, to feel like I had control over something. I booked a meeting for the following week, and when the day came, I walked into the law office feeling like a man walking toward an inevitable cliff edge. As I sat in the lawyer's office, listening to the details of the process, my chest tightened. This was not how things were supposed to end. This was not the life I had signed up for. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Helen, laid it all out clearly, unemotionally. If you decide to go through with this, we can work on a settlement. But if your wife tries to contest, things could get complicated. Custody arrangements, splitting assets, alimony. These can all get messy depending on the circumstances. The word custody echoed in my mind, hitting me harder than I expected. My son. How would this impact him? I had been so wrapped up in my anger and betrayal that I had barely thought about how this would change his life. Was I really ready to put him through a divorce? After the meeting, I drove around town aimlessly, trying to clear my head. I ended up at a park where I used to take my son on weekends. Memories of him running around, laughing as he chased ducks by the pond, flooded back, and I felt this aching in my chest, a reminder of everything I stood to lose. Maybe I could move past Emily's betrayal someday, but could my son? Could he ever look at me the same way if I tore apart his world? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos of us, birthday parties, family holidays, lazy Sunday mornings. We had built something beautiful, a life filled with love, laughter, and all the little things that make a family. And now, one mistake, one choice had put all of it on the line. The decision felt impossible. Part of me wanted to walk away from Emily, to let her see what life looked like without the family she had betrayed. But another part, a quieter part, whispered that maybe forgiveness was worth considering. Maybe, for my son's sake, I should at least try to see if there was anything left to save. A week later, I finally called Emily and agreed to meet her for coffee, in public, neutral ground. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner table, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she had not slept in days, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered why we were there. She looked up when I approached, forcing a small, tentative smile. "Thank you for meeting me, Jack. I know I do not deserve this, but I appreciate it." I nodded, my face impassive as I sat down across from her. "This is not a forgiveness meeting, Emily. I am here to figure out what we do next, for our son's sake." She swallowed, nodding quickly. "I understand. I am just grateful you are willing to talk to me." There was an awkward silence as we both fumbled for words, neither of us willing to look each other in the eye. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jack, I know you cannot see it now, but I am truly sorry for what I did. I was stupid, selfish, and I destroyed the best thing in my life. I know that." I sighed, folding my hands on the table. "You keep saying you were sorry, Emily. But sorry does not fix this. Sorry does not erase the betrayal. Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. I know, Jack, and I do not expect you to forgive me. But I am asking for a chance to make things right. For us, for our son. I know I do not deserve it, but I am begging you. I leaned back, considering her words. You think we can just patch this up? Go to counseling and magically fix what you broke? No, she whispered, her voice trembling. But I believe in us, Jack. I believe that, deep down, we can find a way to rebuild. I am willing to put in the work, to do whatever it takes to regain your trust. Even if it takes years, I am willing to try. Her desperation hung in the air, raw and painful, and I could see that she was genuinely remorseful. But could remorse really undo the damage? Could it take away the images that haunted me every time I closed my eyes? I do not know, Emily, I said finally, my voice low. I do not know if I have it in me to try. She reached across the table, placing a hand over mine. Please, Jack, just think about it. For our son. For everything we have built together. I looked down at her hand, feeling the weight of her touch, the warmth of her fingers, and I felt the faintest flicker of something. Something like hope. But it was buried under layers of pain and anger, and I was not sure if it was strong enough to overcome the betrayal. All right, I said finally, pulling my hand away. I will think about it, but I am not making any promises. Her face lit up with a mixture of relief and sadness, and she nodded, wiping her eyes. That is all I am asking, Jack. Just a chance. We finished our coffee in silence, each lost in our own thoughts, and when we parted ways, I could feel the weight of her gaze lingering on me, as if she were clinging to some fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Over the next few weeks, we kept things civil for our son's sake, but we both knew that the road ahead was uncertain. I agreed to go to counseling not because I was ready to forgive, but because I needed clarity. I needed to understand if there was any part of me that could truly let go of the anger and betrayal. The first few sessions were tense, filled with accusations, tears, and uncomfortable silences. Emily tried her best to be open, to answer every question, to explain every detail, but each answer only seemed to add fuel to the fire. It was one thing to know she had betrayed me. It was another to hear the details, the reasons, the way she had justified it in her mind. But as the weeks went on, something strange happened. The anger, the resentment, it did not disappear, but it started to change. It was like a wound finally beginning to scab over, raw and painful, but healing in its own slow, painful way. I found myself looking at her not just as the woman who had betrayed me, but as a flawed, broken person trying desperately to fix what she had destroyed. One night, after a particularly brutal session, she pulled me aside. Jack, she said, her voice shaking. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. I know I have broken something inside you, but I need you to know that I am committed to making this right. No matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs. I looked into her eyes, searching for any sign that this was just another lie, another manipulation. But all I saw was pain, regret, and a glimmer of the woman I had once loved, the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. I do not know if I can forgive you, Emily, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But I am willing to try, for our son's sake, if nothing else. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she nodded. That is all I want, Jack. Just the chance to try.